Anyway, what are we wanting to do next? I
Well,
think we got
speaking
two
of
more.
legacy, we have two more or one more?
I've got the one of the two Japanese stories. Like I said, if we talk about the other one, you'll have to pull it up. We
Okay.
link them together, but they are the same thing. And then there's the Supreme Court story.
Oh, we forgot about that one. Let's do the Supreme Court first. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good one.
We might save the other one for next time so we can link them together.
Okay. Well, this is something that did you find this one or did I? This is so long ago, I forgot.
You sent this one.
Okay. About term limits, which a lot of politicians talk about term limits today. Now, term limits for specifically though for the Supreme Court, which really but I know that anytime there happens to be a decision that the Supreme Court makes that somebody doesn't like, then all of a sudden they talk about term limits. Why are these judges have to be in there? They're not elected to begin with. They're appointed, and then they can be there for 50 years because they refuse to retire. But the article is about a poll. The poll was conducted by Reuters. It found that 66% of Americans now support Supreme Court term limits.
Oh, they don't even have terms.
Yeah, yeah. And nearly half believe justices. Now, it was hard for me to just kind of go on the attack when I first read this, so let's hear this out a little bit here. So to some, this may appear to be a reaction to the current paradigm of political dysfunction permeating into Washington. However, this debate actually began over 200 years ago as the founders drafted the Constitution. So this goes back talking about Alexander Hamilton, and he really was strongly against the Supreme Court, having any kind of limits. And he argued, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but this is in a Federalist paper, number 78. Alexander Hamilton said the main function of the Constitution is protection of minority viewpoints against the majority. And so for this reason, they should grant the judiciary the authority to interpret the Constitution. If the legislator could interpret whether its own actions were constitutional, all the reservations of particular rights or privileges would amount to nothing, according to Hamilton. To accomplish this purpose requires complete judicial independence from the other branches of government and therefore from the majority impulse of the time that could lead to the violation of those rights. But he also at the same time said that the judiciary is the weakest of the branches, and has no need, meaning, they shouldn't, the judicial branch should not hurt the other branches, just judge, kind of be like the objective judge. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I mean Alexander Hamilton. A lot of his politics I don't like, but I mean there's no denying this guy was a genius. No
Yeah.
denying it. I mean, because let's be honest. I mean, so many people got furious over the gay marriage thing, and
Yeah.
we've talked about this already before. That's what the Supreme Court is supposed to do, is defend people from the angry masses who would strip their freedoms away from them. And yeah, I mean, it says right, because think about it. Most Americans want a constitutional amendment, protecting the American flag, which is ironic because the American flag's the symbol of freedom of speech and expression. It's a emblem, it's a banner. And yes, it bothers me when I see people doing it, but you're dishonoring the flag and its legacy in the country by telling people they cannot do that or prohibiting them from doing it. What it symbolizes is more important than the flag itself. And most people don't get this. I mean, yeah, the Supreme Court's there to interpret it and determine if what the other two branches do are constitutional or not. The other two are political. The Supreme Court's not supposed to be. And people want to make the Supreme Court political. And if you do that, they cannot do their job. Sort of like the Senate. When you made that, you turned them into politicians instead of people protecting the states. They were appointed by state legislatures to defend the states from the power of the federal government.
Right.
Once you turn them into politicians, once they have to get reelected, you're done. You're done. I mean, that was the
Well,
populist
yeah.
movement.
There's other issues there too, obviously dealing with lobbying and
Yeah.
money in politics. The
Yeah.
citizens use another Supreme Court decision, but still, yeah. I strongly agree with you. I'm trying to see the other side of this, but
There
you're
isn't
right.
one.
But 66%
Not a
of
logical
the
one.
people, though, the fact that so many people in this poll thought that they should have term limits, does that show that they just don't understand the Constitution?
Well, it's, what is it? Close to 80% of people can't tell you what the three branches of government are. I mean,
Yeah.
it's scary. I run through these numbers every year in my government class of the people that think, literally, I mean, there's a scary number of people that think the sun revolves around the earth, that live in this country and vote.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's scary. And yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court, he said it was the weakest. Yeah, they have no enforcement power. You know, they're dependent on the other branches to, carry out their decisions. But so, they have no enforcement power. But
Well,
it's
but
so
judges,
important. Yeah, go ahead.
judges at the local level are elected, right? Like in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
are they elected in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are in Kansas too. And I feel like most people that go to the voting booth, they don't know anything about the judges. So if they're voting anyway, they just like, how can you vote when you don't know anything about the judge?
Yeah, we vote to retain or remove, I think, and most of them, and then someone would have to appoint them. But here's a good question. In Kansas, are the party affiliations of the judges on the ballot or just the name?
Just the name.
Yeah, because that's how it is here. That's Oklahoma's way around that problem is we won't put I'm like, yeah. But
no.
Yeah, they're the safeguard. They don't need to be political. I know politics does come into play. I mean, you have your conservative judges and you have your, more liberal-minded judges. But, I mean, no, we don't. Now, as far as should there be a time limit that they're on there, there might be a discussion there. If you get to be 80 years old and you're still there, because we've only had one ever impeached, Salmon P. Chase. I mean, it's very rare because it's very difficult to get onto the court in the first place.
Which is good. I think we learned a big lesson from what Franklin Roosevelt tried to do in the 1930s when he tried to pack the court. Everybody, most people in the United States.
Party.
Yeah.
His own party.
And that's why so many people argue that voting for the president is extra important because of the fact that they have that power to nominate, but they forget the Senate still has to approve. But still, they have to nominate the Supreme Court justices, but I do feel like it is a good system. It really is a genius system. I think
it is.
You're right. It's just gonna be completely political, turn into politicians. I might slightly disagree with you as far as the Senate. I think which amendment was that? Like the 16th Amendment?
17th.
17th,
yeah.
17th, where they changed it so the senators were elected by the people and not a.
I mean, essentially, they wanted to be the House of Representatives 2.0. I mean,
Which
the thing is, our government was set up so perfect. I mean, the president represents the federal government, the House of Representatives represented the people, and the Senate represented the states. And once you ruin one of those, I mean, look what's happened to states' rights since then. I mean, you could argue some of it's for good, some of it's for bad, but the Supreme Court, I mean, just think about how genius this was for him to write this in his time. A lifetime appointment would therefore be necessary to preserve this level of independence. That's what's important about the judges. The president can't put pressure on them. Congress can't put pressure on them. The people can't put pressure on them. Therefore, they're independent and they can do the right thing. They don't have to worry about getting reelected or getting removed. that's what they need to be able to do their job.
But wouldn't they, the people who appointed them were the state legislators, right?
Oh, I was
Am I
talking about the
getting that wrong?
Supreme Court. Yeah, I was talking about the
Oh,
Supreme Court, but
I'm going
yeah,
back to the Senate.
yeah, the state legislature could recall the senators anytime they wanted. I mean,
And
think
they
of
were
the
elected.
yeah, think of the trouble that Hiram Revels had from Mississippi. I mean, he didn't last very long at all, and he barely got in the first place. It was just
Yeah, yeah.
so racial and political, and
It's a crazy time, early Reconstruction, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
well, I just think, you know, I'm a big fan of direct democracy, and I know we don't have it, but
mm,
representative democracy, of course, is the next best thing. But even then, you think about our entire system, our entire Constitution wind to really give a whole lot of power to the average ordinary citizen. I mean, look at the Electoral College. I mean, that is something that is completely elitist. It was never meant to make it so that this mob mentality just overtook. You know, you never have someone like Donald Trump just make his way all of a sudden into politics. I think if it weren't for this shift more towards, you know, I guess more of the mob democracy that democracy can be a sloppy and also bad thing, just frankly bad thing. When you have a lot of uninformed voters, we just mentioned this earlier. I still can't get over this. How you said there's a significant people that still they think that the sun revolves around the earth. You have these people voting.
yeah. They just never really think about it, and a lot of it's you get at. I mean, you see it with jaywalking, and there's another group that goes out there and just ask people point blank
Yeah,
questions, you know, and you freeze or say something stupid, or they don't really think about it. And they just say, well, it looks like that's what happened, so therefore, you know, you'd have to think some of them don't realize what it is they're saying. But yeah, I mean, that the typical American doesn't really know how the Supreme Court works or what it is they're supposed to do or how many branches of government we have. And yeah, it's just the system cannot be held hostage to that type of reactionary, uninformed thinking because you got to have independent judges. They don't, I mean, my goodness, we don't want them to have to think they have to please the president, much less the people. You know, because some people have even talked about them being not just term limits, but, you know, elected, which would be catastrophic. But, you know, the
yeah.
fact that they're independent means when they, you know, because if they were politicians and they were appointed and they had term limits and they had to please the people and all this stuff, I mean, think about what the politicians do when they get out of Congress, you know, their speeches and going on TV shows and becoming lobbyists and stuff, you know, that's just not
Or
the
joining
type of
corporations.
behavior. Yeah, that's not the type of thing we want our justices doing. I mean, think about how rare they go on TV or do interviews and stuff like that. It's just not, I guess the word would be judicial of them. You know,
Yeah.
we used to say it wouldn't be presidential, you know, but it's a new era
Well,
now.
they also the Supreme Court, well, just the judicial branch at every level. Overwhelmingly, the intelligence is highest in that branch of
Oh
government.
yeah.
Um, you, you don't have to. They don't have to have good speech writers or give good speeches, say what people
Yeah,
want to
their
hear.
opinions are very well written. Uh,
Yeah,
high
even
level of skill, high level of skill that they have.
even Scalia, he's a pretty smart guy, even though I disagree with him on some issues, many issues. But yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about. The other thing, I mean, I do agree that the intentions of the Constitution definitely have been harmed for sure with our modern system, but I feel like we need to add to the Constitution to make it better as opposed to going back. Like I feel like we still need to empower the people, but we need to empower them in a way that we're not just there's still some kind of filter so that
Yeah, I mean, they have to be
um,
informed first. I mean, our biggest problem now is people just don't know what's going on or how the government works. They just want to watch Dancing with the Stars. I mean, they know so little of foreign policy and American
well, simple
government,
things like this. There's simple things
our
that
history.
yeah, simple things are popping in my head. Maybe some of them, maybe I'm going to regret saying this. But one, just hints at like Jim Crow. This sounds horrible, but make people prove that they can pass a citizenship test or something or a history test or a government test before
Yeah,
they're able to vote. I know that sounds horrible. Two, on the ballot, don't put political party affiliations. Just put their name and that's it. And maybe put like, I don't know, find a way so that people know where they get their money from. And then, or three, just flat out limit how much money candidates can get, which there's been some efforts to do this already, campaign
yeah.
finance.
I mean, we were talking about Donald Trump earlier, though. If you do that, I'm all for it. But think about how much that opens the door for just wealthy. But of course, this is the way it is already. I mean,
I
I'm
was going to
not
say,
going to
how
get
can that,
elected. I'm not going to get elected president of the United States. But
I vote for you. Uh,
most of
but
my
yeah,
students are like, "Why don't you run? Why don't you run?"
you know a lot about politicians don't. But no, have you ever heard of Lawrence Lessig? Um, he's
Sounds very German. Lessig.
well, yeah. It's funny how that's the first thing you thought of. He wrote a book. Oh gosh, let's see if I'll find it. But he's actually thinking about running for president in 2016 and then resigning shortly afterwards. But let's see. He really wants to. He thinks like all issues that we have with our government today, all come back to basically one thing, and that is how money rules in politics. Like money is the fact that the rotating door, as you mentioned, of lobbyists and politicians, once they get in office, once they get out of office. Let me find the book that he.
Yeah, I mean that while you're searching, there's just one other thing on this. The last thing in that article that was pointed out was the problems in government are with the other two branches, not the Supreme Court. You don't
Right.
want to turn the judicial branch and make it like the others. That's not the way you fix the problem.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Tremendous. You don't turn them into politicians and terms and term limits.
But how
to
to fix the other two branches? He has his book is called Republic Lost, and it's subtitled "How Money Corrupts Congress and They Plan to Stop It." I actually recently bought it, but I have not read it yet. But it was released in 2011. So
I have a feeling you're like me. You have a mountain of books that you haven't got to read, and you can't resist buying more.
Yes.
I've got so many.
Anyway, it's about lobbying being it's at the crux. It's at the root of all issues. We throw all other issues out that you're unhappy about. It all comes back to the way that money filters into Washington D.C. and it's going to take legislation. Let's face it. You and I are not legislation guys. We like to trim down. We don't like to add. But it's going to take, I would say, an amendment to the Constitution, ideally, to fix this issue that we see that turns our politicians into nothing more than pawns for very powerful, wealthy people who, once they get into office, they really can't do much. It's pretty sad.
I mean, think every election you hear them making all these promises and things that, even whether love them or hate them, think of all the stuff the Tea Party candidates said they would do, and then when they got elected, just took over the Senate and the House. Again, they can't do anything.
Yeah. They're just trying to get reelected as soon as they're in office. And so
especially not, I mean, think how many of them unseated career Republican politicians to get there. But even if they all wanted to go through with it, when the other party controls the pen, It's
Yeah.
all just, no, so we can get elected. That's it. It's tragic.
Yeah, it is. So you really got me thinking about that, the 17th Amendment, because
It
I
hit
think
me
about
one day. One
well, I
day.
think about the
That's the amazing
senators.
thing. Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
the senators before then. So this was in the progressive era, in the 19 teens. This
Yeah,
happened. Okay, around the time of the income tax, because I remember it was right after the income
yeah.
tax. Okay. Uh, so see, kids, we don't memorize dates. Okay. Uh, but yeah, I, there are a lot of great senators in the 19th century. Yeah, a lot of them were racist and you know, by today's standards, not the
That
best.
was the 19th century.
But you think about that, yeah, like interesting. What if we bring that back? That's a big what if. That's something I'm going to contemplate now that you pop that idea into my head. I like it.
It really hurt the states when that happened. It really, really, really did.
Yeah. Well, I think we've run that one through.
Yeah.
More love for Hamilton. All right, so we'll get to Japan next week. We're going to talk a lot about Japan and revisionism going on there with among the Japanese, and there's also a little bit of a grudge going on from China and Korea.
From some very
So
odd suspects to be judging people.